imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole. Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of election, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition. It is January 3rd, 2014. I gotta get myself used to saying 2014. I already wrote 2013 about 4 times since the beginning of the new year. So I said that the other day. I have to retrain myself. Anyway, Friday edition, DTRH. And tonight, we were going to do this last Friday, but my guest was kind enough to reschedule because I was just not in any shape last week to be broadcasting at all. So I wanted to make sure I was in the right frame of mind for my guest tonight. So without wasting any more time, I want to bring him right up and get right into the topics. It's my good friend, fellow radio show host, filmmaker, and all-around awesome researcher, Christopher Everard. Chris, welcome back, brother.
Welcome, and I'm glad you made it through your surgery, and it's nice to hear from you. And I'm glad you made it through.
I'm glad to get you back on, man. It's been too long, and I figured I know you've been super busy, so I wanted to let you get know all your stuff behind the scenes settled. You've been doing so many new things.
Yeah, we haven't done a radio show on the subject of space and aliens and space research and secret space projects for a very, very long time. I don't think I've done a radio show on this subject for about 2 years. And 2 years goes by so fast nowadays. It's like a year lasts about 6 months. That's what it feels like to me. I can't even believe it's 2014.
Right? Like, wasn't it just 2012 and everybody was flipping out that it was the end of the world?
It was, yeah. It is. It's just amazing. I mean, everyone's talking about how time is speeded up. There must be something going on. It must be to do with the spin rate of the galaxy or something. Do you know how fast our planet goes around the sun? Do you know what speed we're going?
No.
64,000 miles an hour. Do you know how fast the speed of the planet is rotating?
No, like in going in 360s. No, how
It's
fast?
about, it varies a little bit depending on whereabouts you measure it on the planet, but it's about 940 miles an hour that it spins on its axis.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah.
I wonder, honestly, people always talk about the Earth speeding up and time speeding up. Like, I use this as an example. Dude, I remember when George Bush was the president, and him and Dick Cheney were evil, and Barack Obama wasn't even a blip on the radar, and he's in his second term as the president already. Like,
yeah,
what?
Yeah.
Where did all that time in between go, Chris? Like, I blinked and bam.
I know. Yeah, I mean, you just look at photographs of Tony Blair. He's gone grey. He looks very old now. I mean, I don't watch TV very much. Every time I do see some television, I'm just amazed at how, newsreaders have all of a sudden aged very fast. It's just one of those things, Time, I mean, this last 20 years seems to have lasted about the same amount of time as the 10 years did in the decade before that 20 years started, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it seems that time has doubled up in terms of its speed.
It's incredible. Like, I look at things and I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't that just yesterday? People are like, no, that was 5 years ago, dude. What? Yeah.
Well, I mean, yesterday I was thinking about, times back in London. I thought, it must have been about 10 years ago. And then when I worked it out accurately, it was 27 years ago, the events that I was thinking about. And I thought, oh, no. It's just amazing. 27 years gone by like 10 years.
So do you think there's any merit to this idea that the Earth is actually speeding up somehow, the rotation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the arm of the Milky Way galaxy that we're on is, speeding up. Everything relatively is speeded up. Time is linked to the stars. They calculate time at the moment, excuse me, using 2 atomic clocks in Greenwich in London. And these 2 clocks run all the clocks on the entire planet. And time is gauged by the decay, the radioactive decay of these small radioactive particles which are inside these atomic clocks in the Greenwich Royal Observatory in Greenwich Park near the River Thames in London. But, we're talking about universal time speed up. So it means that the decay of those radioactive particles would also be speeding up, you see, because everything would be speeding up. And it's also to do with human perception as well. I mean, there just doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day. If you've got a busy day, a busy schedule, you've got to be up early and you've got to have a to-do list and you've got to work through it very quickly.
Yeah, it just seems like, I don't know. The more you research and the more you understand, it also seems like time seems to go faster. For those, I don't want to say in the know, because it makes it sound like the illuminated ones, the Illuminati, but you know what I mean? Like, for people that are awake, it's almost like your time, like your perception of reality is maybe because we understand reality for what it really is, and the time and the reality that they have everybody plugged into, right, is fake, like in the Matrix, and we see, I don't know. My brain often goes into things like that. It's like, why do you think I always make the joke around here? People here in America, we lament that all the payphones are going away, right? We're, oh my God, they're taking away all the payphones, and I always say, yeah, it's to make it harder to get out of the Matrix. You can't get out with your cell phone; you have to use a payphone to get out, right? Well,
yeah.
Popeye,
I've got a question for you. Do you believe that everything that we see is a dream, and reality doesn't really exist and the universe doesn't exist?
No, I'm more of the mind that we actually create it, like quantum physics. My belief lies somewhere in closer to the quantum physics side of things, I guess you could say. I would say maybe somewhere between that and quantum physics, but closer probably to the quantum physics side. I don't think that it's a dream. We're living in a turtle's dream somewhere or anything like that. I think that we create our own reality, and just like in quantum physics, they say when when you choose to measure the particle is when you find it there. Well, it's the same thing. If you think of all the different possibilities, if you sit back and you think about all the different possibilities that could go on with one situation, and then you choose the appropriate one that, isn't horrific or whatever, you can kind of manifest your own reality. Well, that goes along the lines of quantum physics. There's all these different possibilities, and the one you choose, it's like measuring the particle. I know it's kind of hard for people that don't understand quantum physics to get, but I know you'll know what I mean. So,
well, what about the universe, though, that existed billions of years before the human mind?
Something had to bring that into existence. I believe that not only and this is where people get into the thoughts on God, right? Personally, I think we're all connected to a higher consciousness somewhere.
Yeah,
that you could call it God, whatever creative force you want to call it. And I believe that there is some energy, some force. I don't want to anthropomorphize it, call it a woman or a man, because that's making it human. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it is, but I know that at least from my research and what I don't want to say just belief, because belief really doesn't mean anything, but just, I guess my understanding of it would be that there's this higher consciousness, this higher understanding, this higher level of thought or creativeness or whatever, of being.
Yeah.
And that's what created everything, including, I believe that aliens tinkered with the humanoids that were here on the planet, too. And people go, well, those are two conflicting interests. Well, no, because something had to create them, and something had to create the forerunners that they came and dicked with. So, you know what I mean? I totally believe in a creative energy, but I also believe in aliens. So,
yeah. Now, what I mean is, do you believe that, the planets and the stars are real, and the galaxies are real?
Oh, totally.
Or do you believe that your mind is creating the universe?
I believe it's a mesh of the two. I don't think the answer lies in strictly one or the other. I think it lies somewhere in between, as with most things.
Did the universe exist before your mind existed?
Yeah. It comes. That's where the question is: does it come from that higher consciousness that, one would say that's where our souls come from, right? And sometimes the intellect, or that everybody that whatever sixth sense people rely on, that gut instinct, whatever. I believe all of that is interconnected. They talk about the chakras and all that stuff. I believe all of that's interconnected. And when people make fun of, oh, you were you nuts? No. I honestly, I have to sit back and ponder these things. I mean, what's nuts to me? What's nuts is for people to sit back and think like humans, the arrogance of humans, right, Chris? We think that we're the end all be all in the universe.
Yeah.
How arrogant is that?
Well, it is crazy because Professor Frank Drake at NASA, he was paid by NASA to do a mathematical probability test of how many advanced civilizations there would be in our Milky Way galaxy. And the Drake equation, the answer, the QED of the answer, is that just in the Milky Way alone, there are 10,000 advanced intelligent civilizations which are at least as technologically advanced as we are. 10,000. That's in our galaxy, and there's 100 million galaxies at least.
I'm thoroughly convinced that Earth is one of the most popular reality TV shows in the universe, and that there's definitely got to be other life watching us.
It's like an intergalactic Truman Show.
Yeah, and I definitely do not think that we're the end all be all of anything. I think that's the height of human arrogance to think that there could be nothing else out there. And this is why I get in fights with all religious people. And it's not just people always love to pick on the Christians. It's not just them. All religions, because all of these gods are all anthropomorphized. They're all man. They're all, it's like in our image. To me, that's pretty arrogant. I'm not saying that I don't believe in God. I'm just saying I'm not going to sit here and pontificate and tell you what I think God is, because I really don't know. I can tell you what I think he isn't. And I shouldn't even say he, because again, that's me anthropomorphizing it. I should say whatever this grand knowledge and being and power and whatever it is, where we come from, this intelligence. I just don't think we should anthropomorphize it. But that's, that's, again, I'm not bashing anybody that does. All religions seem to, make God in man's image. And to me, that just shows that, again, it's like man's level of arrogance, that we're the end-all, be-all, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, there are a few religious texts. There was these little books wrapped in leather called the Nag Hammadi Codices, and I've been to Egypt to see them. They're about the size of a small filofax, and it's papyrus parchment. And they are weird. The Nag Hammadi texts are weird. And there's this one text that isn't really like the other texts. It's just on a few leaves of this papyrus parchment that's tucked inside the cover, one of the leather covers of one of the other books. And it's called Pretanoia, Trimorphic Pretanoia. And what it tells us is the actual creation of the universe, the creation of evil spirits. It describes, everything that's going on that leads to the formation of the planet. And this is where the Nag Hammadi codices are very different to all of the other creation texts. And the God in charge is female. So that's one of the very rare texts there where you've got the main dude, if you like, is not a dude, it's a dudette. And Trimorphic Pretanoia is so psychedelic when you read it. It's just unbelievable. It dates from before the 2nd century AD.
Well, a lot of these old texts and documents, parchments, whatever, throughout the ages, I find it when you research into, the ancient alien theory, whatever you want to call it, ancient astronauts, they all seem to have a common thread, that there was, at some point there was this otherworldly being, whether it was considered an angel or whatever. There's these otherworldly beings. I mean, stuff even going back to like the Sumerian tablets and like the Bhagavad Gita, right? The Indians. This is modern day religion in India. They believe that their gods had space battles and stuff. I mean,
that's right.
Darth Vader, the character of him, was actually based off of one of the stories from in the Bhagavad Gita, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
So
that's right. That's absolutely right. And when you watch Indian TV shows, where they dramatize the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, these kind of spaceships called Vimanas are actually in the Indian TV shows. And thousands of years ago, they're all zooming around the sky in these spaceships.
And they literally had space fights amongst each other.
Yeah.
Where they attacked each other. And
there is there's archaeological evidence that suggests that, that was going on in India, because you have these vitrified hill forts. These are stone fortresses, very, very ancient. Some heat source has heated up the stone so that the stone is virtually turned into glass. We also see that in the Libyan desert as well. There's huge areas of the Libyan desert covered in green glass, where there was a heat source thousands of years ago that turned the sand molten, turned it into glass. Well, that happened at Los Alamos when they exploded the first Trinity atomic device in America, the sand also turned to glass. What happened in Libya is a complete mystery. But people collect this Libyan green desert glass, and they use it in their homes, and they use it for building material. And the stone forts in India, which are, vitrified through, it's like an entire stone castle has been put into a potter's kiln. It's just, it's one of these mysteries that archaeological departments have not been able to solve what was going on.
It's like
but in the Bhagavad Gita, they're firing death rays at each other. The Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, and some of the other texts as well, some of the Vedas.
That's what I was trying to remember, the Veda text too.
Yeah, they actually say that, they had directed energy beam weapons thousands of years ago. Well, amazingly, the archaeological evidence backs up those ancient texts, which, by the way, the Rig Veda I think it is actually the oldest spiritual text in the world, I think, that's still in existence. I could be wrong, but it's either the oldest or one of the oldest. Pretty amazing.
Another little tidbit just to point out to the listeners of why this stuff is important and not just hogwash. One of the first things U.S. Special Forces did in Iraq was, when we invaded Iraq in 2003, was to blow the doors off of the museum and raid all of the artifacts. I mean, one of the things that was taken was a statue, which there's pictures of a reptilian humanoid female breastfeeding a human baby.
That's right. Well, the baby is a little bit weird. You're right. It's a figurine. It's about 5.5 inches high. It comes from an area called Ubaid, and these figurines are known as the Ubaid figurines. There's about 8 or 9 of them. Ubaid is an area in ancient Iraq. It's this mound has churned up amazing artifacts. I mean, probably about 10% of the Baghdad Museum artifacts come from Ubaid. You have a snake-headed female breastfeeding this weird baby. The baby, has partly humanoid bodily features, but its face is very weird. It looks a bit like a dog. And on the shoulder pads of the female mother, there are these nodules, which I think could be a star map of some kind. But these figurines were in every single household in ancient Sumeria, which is a civilization that predates the pharaohs and the pharaonic dynasties of ancient Egypt. Now, the snake-headed women, they kind of are very similar to the snake-headed gods which you find in the creator myths of ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, the pharaohs, the kings and the queens, believed that there were 8 creator gods. 4 were humans with serpent heads, and 4 were humans with frog heads. And those 8 are called the Ogdod, and their will and their willpower created Aten, who was the first, if you like, organizer of matter, the first organizer of the physical realm. And the Ogdod are very, very important. And, they have an amphibian, humanoid, reptilian aspect to them. And when I was in Egypt, I interviewed an Islamic Egyptologist who'd studied at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and he'd also travelled and studied in Saudi Arabia. And he told me that these serpent-headed humanoids and the amphibian-headed humanoids were originally walking the earth. And there's legends and histories in Saudi Arabia that say that these beings were real and they really did exist, like 5,500 years ago. That they really did exist there. Now, what's really interesting is that they blow the doors off of the Baghdad Museum, as if it's one of the top priorities when, Norman Schwarzkopf's forces go into Iraq. They steal these exact figurines. Now, there's a lot more larger, more valuable things to be stolen. One of the most important artifacts there was a big black statue, but they went right past that and they went straight for these figurines. The statue was an effigy. It was a fake copy, so they knew exactly what they were looking for.
Yeah, and it, again, makes you wonder why they would take stone tablets and the statues and all this other stuff. You have to wonder. I mean, we're invading a country. I thought to free people from a dictator, not steal their artifacts. All right, ladies and gentlemen, hold that thought. Chris and I will be back in 3 short minutes. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. And just to let you know, Chris and I are actually planning on doing, we got to work everything out, but we're planning on doing a once-a-month thing where he comes on and we're going to be discussing all of this stuff a lot more in depth. So stay tuned for that. But Chris also has his own show here on Truth Frequency Radio. Chris, plug your radio show and plug the Enigma channel and everything else that you do really quick, because you do a lot of work. So
yeah, there's a new season of television shows. This summer that's just gone, I've made 81. I've produced and directed 81 new TV shows this summer. They've been filmed all over the world. I've got a great team of people that I've put together this year. We have shows that have been filmed in Thailand, in India, in Portugal and Spain, covering the people power revolutionary movements. We filmed a couple of shows in Italy, Vatican City. We went to the smallest micro-state country on the planet. It's so small it has no land. It's just a set of plush offices. And the nation is called the Knights of Malta, and they have an observer seat at the United Nations. So we were filming there. We were filming in the USA. We filmed in Canada. We filmed in Egypt. We also invested in these new little helicopter drone cameras, and we also have a team of people now building jet aircraft for us. That are fitted with 3D, HD, and super definition cameras. The jet aircraft are of various sizes. The smallest ones are about 4 feet across. We have a guy that's built a 90-foot long kind of Concorde for us. And we have another guy who's built his own helicopter that's fitted with 3D cameras. So that's all on the Enigma channel, and you can see a trailer for all of our 2014 new shows. You can see a guy eating soup made from bat, as in fruit bats, and he's eating it. You can see a guy making whiskey that's flavored with king cobra. He's got an entire king cobra in this whiskey that he's making. And then you can also see a segment of a TV series called Gods of the Ancient World, which I present, and I filmed this segment at the Temple of Karnak in Luxor on the banks of the Nile. And the episode that you can see on the Enigma channel right now is discussing how the pharaohs got cocaine. They had the coca plant. We know this because we found traces of the coca plant ingested into the lungs of King Ramesses II. And they also had tobacco. Well, the coca plant and the tobacco plant didn't exist in ancient Egypt. They come from Central America and North America. How they got those plants is a complete mystery. Of course, it's yet another subject which mainstream archaeology ignores. So that's the Enigma channel. You can sign up for a free account. About 139,000 people have signed up just in the last few months. So it's enigmatv.com, enigmatv.com, enigmatv.com.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, I suggest you check out Chris's work and all of his films. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I've said this before. Chris has his own very unique way of investigating things. Like when he investigated Diana's death, he actually bought the exact same type of car she died in.
Yeah.
And then drove the exact route in the car.
That's it. Yeah.
Talk about investigative journalism.
Yeah, it's a Mercedes S280, exactly the same car. The journey took 6 minutes, but the ambulance driver officially says he can't remember exactly which route he took. And the real route takes 6 minutes to drive in rush hour traffic, and he took between 1.25 hours and 1.75 hours. And there's not a single witness who saw an ambulance crawling along the road at less than 1 mile an hour.
Yeah, in like reverse, it would have had to be going.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, because Diana was murdered in the back of that ambulance. She wasn't killed by the car smash. She was injured, but she survived the crash.
And you actually, your film, he's got tons of films, ladies and gentlemen, but his film about the death of Princess Diana actually exposes a lot of interesting things. Two things that stand out to me is, A, she hit the 13th pillar. Coincidence? Right, sure. And the area where the tunnel is, didn't that used to be a cave or an underground chamber of some sort where they used to do, back in the day, the pagans used to do sacrifices to the goddess Diana?
I mean, it's on the tourist maps. They're called the Parisian Catacombs, and they're open to the public. And the entrance to the catacombs, which date back to Roman and pre-Roman times, the entrance where you've got the little box office where you pay to go for a tour is right next to the opening of that tunnel. And there are actually doors leading from the side walls of the tunnel, the Pont d'Alma tunnel, into those catacombs, which have been there since Roman and pre-Roman pagan era. And they have altars with, big stone blocks in there where they used to do sacrifices. And Diana is the name of the goddess of hunting in the ancient world. And she was always associated with the moon. And the tunnel, the Pont d'Alma, means the bridge of Alma. And Alma is an ancient word for the moon. So you had Diana in a bridge of the moon with ceremonial catacomb kind of ritual crypts right next to where the car crashed into the 13th pillar. You know, it's all there. All the symbology is there.
And the traffic cameras in France weren't working, right?
That's right. That's right. There's not a single camera that actually caught the car, but somebody driving through the tunnel literally just a couple of minutes afterwards got a speeding ticket, and the cameras were working for them. So the cameras were deliberately humanly controlled and switched off just literally for the period of the crash itself, and then they were switched back on so that they could continue giving parking tickets to people.
I'm sure that's just a coincidence, though.
Oh, yeah. Also, of course, they sprayed the entire area with hot water and cleaned down the entire tunnel within, just a couple of hours of the crash. Or no, I'd say within 4 hours of the crash. These machines were in there spraying and cleaning everything. I mean, it's a crime scene. The world's most important, the world's most famous woman is murdered or killed, is meant to have died at the scene. I mean, they knew that within the early hours. And instead of putting a few parking cones out and redirecting the Parisian traffic, they send this truck in there which sprays it all down and cleans the road, cleans the crime scene. Amazing.
They actually spent more time investigating the death of Paul Walker, the actor from Fast and Furious, than they did Princess Diana's death. And when you see them doing things like that, it's obviously a blatant cover-up. I mean, obviously you see a regular accident, and when I mentioned Paul Walker's death, I showed you the example of a regular accident. Guy crashed into a tree, got killed with his friend. They spend more time investigating a regular accident than they do, and okay, the guy's somewhat famous, he's an actor, but they spent more time investigating his accident than they did looking into the death of Princess Diana.
The weird thing is that this is the most important thing, if we're going to discuss it, is that she wrote 2 letters. One was given to her butler. The second letter was given to Lord Michon, who was her solicitor, her lawyer. And she said this is her actual words, they are planning a car accident, serious head injury, and it's Charles, who's her ex-husband. And she wrote that twice in 2 letters and gave it to 2 people. Lord Michon, obviously after the crash happened, he approached the most senior police officer at Scotland Yard, which is the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police in London, and he showed this top policeman the letter from Diana saying that, they're planning an accident to kill me in a car crash. And this policeman took the letter, put it in a safe, locked the safe, and forgot about it. That's the official story anyway. Now what's happened is that the investigation is being reopened in Paris, and that police officer and a couple of other dudes in England that had seen the letter, they're being kind of subpoenaed by a Parisian court, and we'll see, I think, this year some new Parisian investigation because that letter is essential evidence, and it was never read at any of these inquests. So it's very obvious that it is murder, and it was Prince Charles who was cited by Diana in both those letters. Now, how do they manage this situation with those 2 princes? If you type in their mother's name into any search engine, I think probably the 4th or 5th Google search result is probably going to be my film or some, website that's talking about how she was murdered and it was all a conspiracy. How do they stop Prince William and Prince Harry from seeing that stuff?
Do you think that they've brainwashed the kids into thinking that there's just rampant conspiracy theories out there that have no merit? Or do you think those kids are, have been brainwashed to the point where they're beyond reproach anyway when it comes to the aspect of good versus evil? Maybe they're already beyond the tipping point, for the bad side.
Well, I'm of the opinion that there's probably been a confession by their father to them. They're in a very difficult situation. They are born into the situation. They're going to inherit a multi-trillion pound empire, and their father confides in them, look, it was a terrible thing that I did. I gave the order, what do you do? I mean, do you turn your own father over to the police, or do you keep your mouth shut and take the Aston Martins and the pin-up models in your hotel room in Las Vegas and have £1 trillion in the bank?
I find it funny when people think that the police would actually arrest anybody in the royal family anyway.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't. I mean, they were actually, supposedly looked into, right? For I guess, for show or whatever. And there's no connection. The royal family has no connection. The SAS, there's no connection with the SAS and her death. Oh, there's no such thing as the Boston Breaks method. I'm suppose you're going to tell me next too, right? I mean, come on. And then look at Michael Hastings, the death of that guy, right? The reporter 6 months ago, whatever long ago it was. I mean, that's like when I went on air, I talked about that. I actually brought up your piece of the investigation from the Diana crash, and I played a piece of audio, about a minute and a half of audio where you were explaining, or from the film where it was explaining what the Boston Breaks was, and she was killed in the 90s. This is 2000 and, at the time, 2013 it was when he was killed. So, and can you imagine, they probably don't even have to put a huge big box in your car anymore. They probably just need a microchip.
Well, the steering, that's right. Steering mechanisms have, gone very digital. I mean, the assassination of Diana took place August 1997. Well, if you compare a car from 1997 to a car from 2007, you can see that, things have become a lot more technologically advanced. The Mercedes itself did have an engine management chip and is a very advanced car. And like you were saying to the listeners, I bought the exact same car, drove it for a couple of years to really get to know that car. And the car had previously been stolen. Previous to the crash which led to the death of Diana, that car had been stolen, and I think it's the passenger door, it was recovered. It was found by the police. It was stolen at gunpoint at a set of traffic lights. Then it was recovered. Very weirdly, one door had been taken off of the car, which is a very difficult thing to actually take off of a car like that. And the engine management chip had been stolen. Now, it was taken to the garage. The engine management chip was replaced. The door was replaced. And then it was delivered to Etoile Limousines, which is the company that provides limousine services to the Ritz Hotel in Paris. And the first people to get into the car since it had been stolen at gunpoint were Dodi, Henri Paul, Diana, and the bodyguard.
The one that was, and Henri Paul was, just so people know, was the one that was supposedly driving. Oh, well, I mean, he was driving the car, but he's the one that takes they lay the blame for the accident on, pretty much.
That's right. They laid the blame on him. I think that he was involved, and I think that he liked his role as head of security, and there was very large amounts of money paid into his Place Vendôme bank account. He had several bank accounts, by the way, but there were several large amounts in cash paid into his bank accounts. Well, that's illegal in France, by the way. And I'm sure that he was paid these lumps of cash in exchange for spying on what Diana and Dodi were doing. They had dinner, I think they had several meals actually, in the presidential suite of the Ritz. And I'm sure as the head of security, he was earning extra money from MI6, possibly Mossad, and possibly a couple of other intelligence agencies. That's what those types of guys do. They meet in strip clubs and bars very late at night. They'll give a little tidbit of information, and then, they'll receive a plain brown envelope stuffed with cash. That's what goes on. It's been going on in the management of hotels that attract politicians and diplomats for, hundreds of years probably.
I couldn't make this up. You couldn't make this up. A team of writers from Hollywood, by the way, couldn't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just look. I didn't know how deep this rabbit hole, as it were, went until I actually watched your movie, and I knew that there was some shady questions and stuff, but I had no idea how deep it went. Before I even forget to say this, because we've pumped the movie so much, where's the best spot for people to buy it? Because I really urge the listeners to get it.
Well, what it is that it's being remastered because we've had a British inquiry. This has all happened since I made my film. We've had a British inquiry that gave us a verdict of unlawful killing. So now that's a very important thing, because they're not saying this was death by accident. They're saying this was an unlawful killing. That's a very serious verdict. So that was from a British jury. We've also had a follow-up investigation in Paris, and again, that's going to be reopened this year. So my film is going to be broadcast in a remastered 2014 edition on the Enigma channel. So if you sign up for an account, it's free to get a basic Freeview account. You just go to enigmatv.com. We'll be broadcasting the 2014 version. Well, the original film was 4 hours, and we're going to be broadcasting a total of 7.5 hours of new investigative material and interviews, and it's all filmed in Paris. We bought the exact same car. We drive through the same tunnel. We filmed the hospital. We pulled over onto the side of the road in the exact same spot that the ambulance pulled over in, and we've uncovered even more material now. So that's going to be on the Enigma channel this year. And there's no schedules. You don't have to rush home from work and worry that you're going to miss a show. You choose what you want to watch when you want to watch it. And that's the great advantage of the Enigma channel over every other kind of mums and dads old-fashioned TV channel.
And before I forget, because we got the break coming up in about 4 minutes, but ladies and gentlemen, don't fret, we still have another hour coming up. You mentioned before the Knights of Malta when you were talking. Yeah. That's one of these secret society groups. And
that's right. My grandfather, people get confused because the names are very similar. You've got the island nation known as Malta. Then you have a secret society called the Sovereign Military Order of the Knights of Malta. My grandfather was a member. They provide security services to the Vatican. And then you actually have a country called the Knights of Malta, which has a status, it's recognized by the United Nations. And they have their offices in Rome. And their offices are actually sovereign territories. When you walk into their offices, you're walking into the country known as the Knights of Malta. and they issue their own passports. They have their own coins. They have their own diplomatic cars. So we can talk about that after the break if you're interested.
Yeah, well, that's actually an important thing because that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is because we wanted to talk about the Illuminati and secret societies a little bit.
Yeah.
And I had wanted this is an important point because, like you said, there's the problem when you talk about like the Knights of Malta or anything like this, or like Freemasons too. A lot of people don't really research it in depth, so they don't understand the differences. And what happens is they'll take something from maybe the sovereign order of the Knights of Malta, and then something from the country, the Knights of Malta, and they mix it together. And then if they're trying to tell somebody about it, and somebody maybe knows a little bit more, and they're confronted, and they try to refute what they're saying, these people are just totally decimated because they don't really have an understanding of what they're talking about to begin with. I call it shinfo, which you can. It's shitty information. That's what it means, and that's exactly what these people put out. That's they put out shinfo, and it's important to actually understand things like Freemasonry. And I'll say this really quick in a nutshell because the break's coming up. But for like Freemasonry, a lot of people, all Freemasons are bad. Well, no, not all Freemasons are bad. Like Pike talked about, there's the blue rings, the first 3 rings. That's where these guys go out and do fundraisers and help sick kids and do car washes and things like that.
Yeah.
And your mom or your uncle, or I should say more like your dad, your uncle, your brother, whoever, they're all members of that, right? Maybe your mom's a member of the female, wives club version of whatever. That's the first 3 rings. They have no idea about the inner rings and what is going on in the upper echelon. Even like some of these congressmen that are higher ranking degrees in Freemasonry, they only know a certain extent. After what is it? I think after the 33rd degree, there's 34, 35, and 36. I think if I remember correctly, it's the Illuminati degrees. These are degrees that even some of these people have no idea about. Even people that think they know don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, they do it that way on purpose. Pike talked about this. That's how they keep people confused. It's like it's a secret society inside of a secret society. So you have to take the time to research it because your local lodge of Freemasonry, most of those guys are, I'm willing to bet, are definitely not part of the New World Order, and that's why they look at you funny when you're like, "Oh my God, evil Freemason! Oh, don't eat my baby." That's the kind of stuff that makes us look insane. Like I said, shinfo. You have to do your research. Anyway, Chris and I will get in-depth more into this stuff on the other side. 3 minutes. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back. Check out all of Chris's work, and at the very least, get his Diana movie. Get all of his stuff because it's amazing, but at the very least, get his Diana movie. It'll blow you away. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is January 3rd, 2014, the Friday edition of Down the Rabbit Hole, and tonight my guest is my good friend, radio show host, researcher, and excellent filmmaker. I urge you to purchase his films, Mr. Christopher Everard. Chris, welcome back for hour number 2, brother.
It's nice to be with you. I thought what we could do is we could kick off by discussing SMOM. SMOM. It sounds like one of the baddies from one of the James Bond films, but that's really what they're called. They're called SMOM, and that's SMOM, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. And Malta is an island nation in the Mediterranean, and these guys that are running this sovereign military order have been around for hundreds of years. They apparently, their official history is that they formed themselves into a secret brotherhood in the year 1050. So that's a long time ago, in 10th century, and they formed themselves into this brotherhood in Jerusalem during the First Crusades. Now, you had the Knights Templar. They were French aristocrats, and I've been to all of their castles and their houses in the research for my documentary films. In actual fact, I've been filming at the castle of Godfrey de Bouillon. He was one of the first Knights Templar, and he was one of the first Crusaders who was sent over by the Vatican from the south of France, went to Jerusalem, and they were supposedly they were meant to be killing Muslims to free up Jerusalem, which was a mini kingdom in those days, and bring Jerusalem back under the rule of the Vatican. What the Knights Templar really did, as aristocrats and being, very wealthy, is that they went over there and they started becoming friendly, basically, with the Muslims who were meant to be their enemies. They became friendly with Saladin, who was the leader of the Muslims. They became friendly with the Jewish Hebrew rabbis. They became friendly with everyone. And they kind of rented themselves out as paid assassins and paid killers. And if you had a problem with a certain sector, a certain group of hooligans or whatever, you could go to the Knights Templar and you could pay them money, and they'd kill those people for you.
And Godfrey was, or Godfrey, however you want to pronounce his name, he was a blood descendant of George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes, if you don't you? I find it ironic that one of the leaders of the quote unquote First Crusade has direct blood lineage to one of the people that's directly responsible for going back in the person that was the puppet. I shouldn't say he's directly responsible.
Wow,
he was a puppet, but yeah, Bush has lineage back to him. So, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence too.
Well, I doubt it, because there's 42 presidents that are all related to old King John.
So are you saying it's not a coincidence?
Royal family.
Are you saying it's not a coincidence, Chris?
Anyway, these Knights Templar, they were all wealthy. I mean, if you wanted them to go off and kill people for you, you could give them money. That was okay. But what they were really interested in is ancient artifacts, scrolls, texts, documents, artifacts. This was the kind of thing that they were really after. And they were bringing back to Europe amazing ancient things that had never been in Europe before. They brought magical spells, Babylonian spells, Sumerian spells, hexes to make your enemies go blind. All this kind of thing was being brought back to Europe for the very first time. And at the castle of Godfrey de Bouillon, you can actually see the cross that Jesus was nailed to, and it's set into the stone floor of this castle in France. And I filmed it for the Enigma channel. So if you want to see all this stuff, just go to enigmatv.com, get yourself a free view account. We're setting up accounts for everyone at the moment. And, I give everyone a tour of not only the actual cross that Jesus was meant to have been nailed to, but they actually also collected the nails, the 9 nails or 7 nails that were used to actually nail Jesus to that cross. And I've been to all of the places where they've made reliquaries, like little caskets around. They've built these caskets around those nails. I filmed all of those. And basically I'm making 2 new Illuminati films. That's what people who tune into the Enigma channel can look forward to. We've got Illuminati Glitterati, which I've been filming and making for the last 2.5 years, that is about mind control, symbolism, Walt Disney, Britney. It's about Kenneth Anger. It's about all of the things that go on with propaganda via television and Hollywood. So that's called Illuminati Glitterati. That's going to be broadcast on the Enigma channel. And then I'm making an actual movie, which is all about these artifacts, the nails, the cross, and a spearhead that was meant to have been plunged into the ribs of Jesus by a Roman soldier called Longinus. And this spearhead and the nails that hold the spearhead and the shaft of the spear have all been retained. There's fragments in a church in Armenia. The Vatican have one nail. And the most famous tip of this spear of Longinus is in the Hofburg Museum in Vienna, in Austria. And this was one of the most important artifacts. As soon as Hitler was Chancellor, he instructed his top people that they were going to drive, basically, from Berlin to Vienna, and they were going to so-called liberate, or join up with the Austrian people, because Hitler was Austrian himself. He took German citizenship in 1932. It was very late on. And the first place he went to when he arrived in Austria was the Hofburg Museum, and he opened the glass case and took out the spear of Longinus. It's better known as the Spear of Destiny. And every world leader, for some reason, has wanted to own this spear. And it's had some amazing owners. Several popes have owned it. Napoleon Bonaparte has owned it. And then Emperor Rudolph of the Habsburg Empire, who was employing basically every single psychic, telepath, clairvoyant, magician, alchemist, and occultist in Europe at one time. He also owned it as well. And so Hitler wanted this spear. And he also wanted the nails that had been used to nail Jesus to the cross. And they were also after the actual cross itself.
And the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail, like all that. I know the Indiana Jones movie is a movie, but for a lot of people don't realize that that's actually loosely based off of reality. I mean, he actually had entire units that did nothing but go look for this stuff.
That's right. They had an entire ministry in Berlin, which was a ministry of the occult and paranormal. And it was under the direct leadership of Himmler. Now, Heinrich Himmler was named Heinrich because his father worked for Prince Heinrich of Germany. Himmler, is a distant relation of the Bavarian royals. The Nazis were funded by Prince Karl Edward Saxe-Coburg, who is the exact same family as the British royal family that we have in Buckingham Palace to this day.
Yeah, they changed their last name to the Windsors. It's really Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, right?
Yeah, that's it. All of the sisters of the Duke of Edinburgh, who's alive today, all of his sisters married senior Nazis. Hitler would have been nothing without the royals. The royals funded the Third Reich, and they funded their research, if you could call it that, into twins and injecting children with colored dyes and slicing Siamese twins open, vivisection while they were still alive. And they had medical laboratories being run by crazed psychopaths like Dr. Joseph Mengele, who used to, do these experiments on twins. He'd get two twins to lay down next to each other, and he'd inject their hearts with chlorophyll simultaneously. He'd lock one twin in a steel box and see whether it had an effect on the other twin. He used to stitch their arms and their legs onto each other's bodies. He used to exchange their blood. All of this was funded by the royal families, or I should say by the royal family. And the royal family that we see in Buckingham Palace, their real name is Saxe-Coburg-Gotha, and they are the family that funded the Third Reich and are responsible for tens of millions of homes being destroyed. You'll see that Buckingham Palace was never bombed, and you'll see that Britain was never invaded. The only part of Britain that was under Nazi rule was the Channel Islands, which are these small islands off the coast of France.
It makes you wonder, couldn't the Luftwaffe hit a target?
Well, they did hit a few big London buildings, but mostly they were bombing the East End of London, which is where the Jewish families lived. Well, Buckingham Palace, they couldn't hit Buckingham Palace. You'd think that they'd want to wipe out Buckingham Palace, wouldn't you?
They just couldn't see it. It's that London weather. It's all that fog, I guess. It just, it was miracle fog. Winston Churchill did it. He clapped his hands together 3 times and fog came up and blocked the Luftwaffe.
Yeah, well, in actual fact, Churchill, he did hire a team of witches to... What they did is they had a ceremony on the Sussex Downs at the top of the White Cliffs of Dover. He hired these witches because Winston Churchill was initiated into the Albion Lodge at Blenheim Palace, and the Albion Lodge is a brotherhood of Druids and Freemasons. And Winston Churchill, his family have a very long tradition of being Masons, Druids, and witches. He hired this group of witches to do a ceremony on the grassy downs at the top of the White Cliffs of Dover to repel the black magic being used by the Nazis. And in actual fact, these witches did the ceremony completely naked, and one of them caught a very serious cold and consciously, sacrificed himself to the cause to make their magical working a lot stronger. And what they did, one of them actually wove a small corn dolly, which is like a little mascot made out of wheat stalks that have been matted and plaited together. And they made this little corn dolly and imbued within this little corn dolly protection for the British Isles against the evil of the Nazi regime. And these witches sent this corn dolly to number 10 Downing Street as a gift for Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill had this corn dolly tied to the Rolls-Royce emblem on his car and was driving around London with this witch's corn dolly tied to his Rolls-Royce. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. His girlfriend was a witch as well. Winston Churchill had a long-term relationship with a woman called Helen Duncan, and he actually repealed the Witchcraft Act, which forbade witchcraft ceremonies, and played a major role in the resurgence of witchery in the British Isles and also in the world in general.
Interesting. Did not know that. I have a question that I have to ask you. Same topic of the creepy royal family and the UK there. Jack the Ripper. What?
Yes.
In your research, I know you've researched this. In your research, from what I understand, I've seen a couple different stories, but from what I understand, he was. Most of the evidence points to the fact that he was, or not that a fact. He points to the assumption, we'll say, that he was a doctor for the royal family. And some people say he was sick. Some people say he was doing the murders at the behest of the royal family to get body parts for ceremonies. What say you?
Right. Well, I can tell the listeners exactly who Jack the Ripper is. Jack the Ripper is not one person. It's actually a gang of 6 men. We know this because one of the members of the gang actually went to see Inspector Aberline at Scotland Yard, and he was an aristocrat. His name was J.K. Stephen, and he actually made a confession that was written down into Inspector Aberline's diaries. But those diaries were then dipped in wax and sealed for, I think, the best part of 94 years. Because the confession that J.K. Stephens made was so explosive, it could have brought down the entire royal family and sent Britain into a people power revolution, which is what we see going on in the world today. And what J.K. Stevens said is that there was a driver called John Netley, and he was like the lookout for this group of killers. And then you had Sir William Gull, who was one of the doctors. He was the physician to the royal family. He was the doctor of Prince Albert, the German prince who was the husband of Queen Victoria. And then the other major prominent member was Lord Randolph Spencer Churchill, who's the father of Winston Churchill. And he was very good friends with the king. And he was like a kind of henchman. He was the most senior Freemason in Ireland. He had a Masonic rank, which was Magistorium, which, is pretty high-ranking Mason there. And he was a member of the Royal Alpha Lodge. Now, the Royal Alpha Lodge convened its first meetings at Kensington Palace. It later continued to meet at the Café de Paris in Victoria. Now, the Royal Alpha Lodge invited and had as a guest several times the Prince of Wales and the King and other kings from other European nations. I mean, they're all the same family. This is a very important thing for people to understand. When you see the King of Denmark, he is the same family as the Queen of England. There's really only 2 royal bloodlines in Europe, and they are actually all related. The Queen is married to her cousin right now. The Prime Minister of Britain, David Cameron, is the cousin to Queen Elizabeth. It's all one family of people. Sometimes they call themselves Saxe-Coburgs, sometimes they call themselves Camerons, other times they call themselves Schleswig, Holstein, Glucksburg, Sondersburg. Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Wow, that was a long one. And by the way, so people understand what Chris means. In case you're not getting what he's saying, let me break it down for you in the simpler version. Okay, if this were in America, there'd be banjo music playing inside the royal house. You know, these people marry inside their own bloodline.
Yeah.
You know, like so the Dutch royal family is the same lineage as
right.
the London, you know, the royal family you see in London. I mean, look whose father founded the Bilderberg Group. It was Queen Beatrix. Was actually now she's not even the queen anymore. Didn't she abdicate the throne to her son?
Yes, but I mean, she's one of the richest women on the planet because she owns petrochemical corporations. I mean, you know, whether she's on the throne, whether she's abdicated, really, to be quite honest, it just really doesn't matter. They're so wealthy. These people are trillionaires or even quadrillionaires, whatever comes after trillionaire.
You know, I didn't know this, but they actually have a couple of those palaces they have. That are, the one that's down in Dam Square there, they have a couple of those throughout the country. And the one that's down in like central Amsterdam there isn't even, they don't even stay there. Like, they're not even in there. There's obviously like a crew that goes in there and maintains it, but there's nobody in there staying there at all.
That's right. That's right. That's what you'll find in England as well. There's 30 royal palaces in England, 30. And it's really only Windsor Castle that's used. I mean, Buckingham Palace is used quite a bit. I mean, you see, those palaces are really the headquarters of a global corporation, which is known as the royal family. And they have thousands of staff and they have hundreds of offices. Why do they need them? They need them because they're running the world. That's what's going on, folks.
It's crazy, and people will be like, no, you got it. No, man, this stuff is, this is not tinfoil hattery. This is the real deal. You start to dig and you start to look. I mean, I've been there in Amsterdam myself. I've seen the palace, and you look at it and you're like, wow, it's huge. And there's, you know, you see some people, like workers milling about, you know, on the outside, but you assume, oh, that's the Queen's palace. As a guest, you don't know anything, right? You know, typical dumb, ignorant American.
Well, they're not actually in the Netherlands most of the time. They're in a little island called Curaçao. Which has beautiful weather and white powder sand beaches and beautiful clean water. And it's like this idyllic desert island that has the laws of the Netherlands.
Yep, prostitution's legal there. I remember it from when I was in the Coast Guard. I remember the island.
Really?
Well. Yep, it's a port.
What, in Curaçao?
Yep.
In Curaçao?
Yep. I don't know if it still is now, but I know prostitution was legal. They had a place called if I remember correctly, it was called the Warehouse or something to that effect. And you could go in and for like literally like $40, you could pick out 3 prostitutes and go and get a room for the night, like 40 or 50 American dollars. It was ridiculous. I don't even know if that stuff still exists now. But I know, like, again, I mean, parts of Amsterdam prostitution is not frowned upon. It's not illegal.
No, it's actually on the official tourist maps now.
Yes, it is. I've been to Amsterdam twice. It's actually a real trip. Like, you got to be careful.
If you walk down, they have a real tour. Yeah.
If you walk through, I just walk down the street with my wife. But if you break your camera out, they'll rip that camera out of your hand and throw that thing in one of the canals. They might even throw your ass in the canal. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We got another half hour with my good friend Christopher Everard. Stay tuned. I promise you'll learn something. This is just a taste of all the shows to come. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Final segment of tonight's edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. Hanging out with my good friend Christopher Everard. By the way, I remember during the break, the name of the place wasn't the Warehouse. It was called the Compound. The place I was talking about in Curaçao. I guess the legalized whorehouse, I guess you could call it. I'm trying not to make it sound as horrible as one would think, because it's actually not as gross as one would think. Just like Amsterdam, prostitution, because it's legal, it's all, the women are tested and everything else. It's the world's oldest profession. I'm not saying run out and get a hooker, everybody. I'm just saying it's the world's oldest profession. And before you go and villainize or hate on another country or culture because it's legalized, understand that it's not as disgusting or gross as you would think, because it's actually much cleaner because everybody's tested and yada, yada, yada. So I just wanted to throw that out
well,
there.
I have to say, Popeye, that the red light district of Amsterdam is actually on the official government tourist maps.
There you go.
And there is nothing from the government's point of view that, they're not hiding anything of what goes on there. And they're in these very ancient buildings. Some of the oldest buildings, some of the buildings there are where the Grand Master paintings that you see hanging in the world's great art galleries were painted in these ancient buildings, where it's now known as the red light district, and you have the girls standing there in the windows. Those buildings date back literally centuries upon centuries. There's nothing seedy. I think it's worth saying this to the listeners, that because it's all official, there's nothing sleazy or seedy about walking around there. It's actually recognized as an industry by the Dutch government.
I have to honestly tell you, I spent about a month in Amsterdam in the two times that I've been over there. My wife and I spent about a month over there. And I can tell you that there were less homeless people. And I said this to my wife. I said, you realize that, and at the time I lived in South Beach, which is a very transient tourist area, just like Amsterdam, or, one would think. There's a lot of, because there's a lot of people from all over the Caribbean and like South America and Central America, and some of the Europeans come over to South Beach, plus all the Americans come down, right? Well, picture Amsterdam is like that, but of the world. Like everybody from all over the world. China, India, America, Canada, the UK, everybody's all over the place. Everybody comes together in Amsterdam. There's this very, I don't know, it's a tourist, I guess would be lack of a better term, like very touristy area, but for the world, right? And for a place that has more people from around the world, you would think, oh my God, more bad people, oh crime, like the fear mongers would have you believe. And yet, dude, the streets are way cleaner. They have, there are cops that walk around, but it is like every morning the street crews are out there at about 5 o'clock, 5:30, and they're out there and they pressure wash like the gum and stuff or anything off the sidewalks really quick. They clean all that stuff up. And it's not just in the tourist area. You see them going all throughout the city. You'll see them do it. I don't know how long it takes them.
The country, actually, the entire country of the Netherlands is very well managed. And
I know they're a socialist country, but I was very impressed. I was like, wow. I mean, I might not agree with that, what their politicians do or whatever, but look, dude, the crime rate was lower. They didn't have. I saw more homeless people out on. What I was getting at with, between the two cities of South Beach and Amsterdam is I saw more homeless people where I lived in South Beach, where there's less people from around the world than there are in Amsterdam. So you would just assume more people, more homeless, more crackheads, more drug addicts, and yet they just have a way of looking at things, a little bit differently when it comes to their drug policy. And look at the effect just thinking about something a little bit differently has. I mean, dude, it's amazing the comparison. If I compared the two, you'd look at South Beach and like, ooh, I don't even want to touch it. You'd look at Amsterdam like a beautiful bathroom in the Four Seasons, and you'd look at South Beach like the bathroom in McDonald's, and you don't even want, you want to levitate in there if you have to use it, literally.
Yeah. Well, the reason that you don't see homeless people very often in the Netherlands is very simple. It's because there's a law, and it's illegal if you're 30 years old or older than the age of 30. It's illegal to be homeless in the Netherlands. So if they find you sleeping on the street, the police actually, take you to the police station. They make a few phone calls, and they immediately find you a place where you live with your own apartment. If you're younger than 30, there are so many training opportunities there which are funded by the government. It really doesn't matter what kind of profession you're interested in. They have beginner, intermediary, and advanced training courses, which are residential courses in literally every subject under the sun from A to Z. And of course, if you're a youngster The police will come up to you if you're sleeping on the streets, and they get talking to you. What are you interested in? What kind of things do you want to do? And then they will enroll you into one of these residential courses, and they take place in the countryside. A lot of those courses are actually in castles. There's quite a lot of castles in the Netherlands. So that's really how they manage the situation. When they see somebody shooting up, drugs or whatever, they don't see that person as a criminal. The police are taught that when they speak to that person, they should treat that person as a victim, not as a criminal.
Well, see, it's all about a change of mind. And again, I'm not saying run around and, the government's job is to run around and, be the social network nanny of everybody and everything. Again, I don't agree with everything. But I have to tell you what, if just that change of mind it's amazing. Like if you had a choice between one of two things, spending the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, probably actually I think it's $1 billion industry if I actually go look into it again. And nowadays in today's money, I'm sure it'd probably be close to $1 billion industry. The prison industrial complex. How much money do we pay for all these people to be in jail, not violent offenders and stuff like that, but people that really shouldn't be in jail? It's a waste of time, things like that, right? If we reform the amount of money that we waste on that, you turn around and take that money, and people that are homeless and stuff like this, that you don't want to say, look, we're going to pay your rent for you and everything else, but you help them get a place, and then part of the deal is they have to get a job and, whatever. I'm sure you could figure out some way of micromanaging it that way. But, I mean, it's much better. Look, if you're going to get picked up by the cops and there's two outcomes, either going to jail or them helping you find a place to live and getting off the street, what's more productive out of the two? If you're going to spend money on the two, right, if you're going to spend money on a program that has police rounding people up that are homeless in the street, what's the better of the two outcomes to solve the homeless problem? Throwing them in a jail cell, or maybe helping them change their life and get their life back on track?
Well, actually, what you've just said there is complete logic. And obviously the right thing to do is to get people's lives back on track. Unfortunately, the situation we have now, with the privatization that's happened in the prison service of the United Kingdom, in the United States and several other countries in Europe, is that if you look at a homeless person who is drinking a lot of alcohol, because the alcohol, kind of insulates you against the cold, and they've lost their path in their, they've wandered off of their life path, and they're doing nothing all day. When you look at a person like that, there is nothing of value to that person from the point of view of Obama or Cameron or the top government officials. But if you take that person and you put them into a private prison, that person becomes a number. They become a tagged, numbered person, and they become a unit of profit for this industrialized, privatized prison service. And that prison service then invoices the government a lot of money, actually. It's usually somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 every 12 months for the average inmate. So this is the danger of having a privatized prison service. It's going to lead to abuses, and those people potentially could be sent on a merry-go-round time and time again. They would be, recommended to be, incarcerated when it came up for their parole, just so that the system could continue to make money from them.
Well, we have that problem here in the U.S. too, and yeah. I want to get back into the Knights of Malta and the Illuminati, and we're going to do that in 1 second. But before we do that, I want to add a little thing to that. We have that same issue here in the States, where a lot of these states now, the states don't run the prison system anymore like they used to, because funding, blah 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 blah. Obviously, if they had realized that just a change of the way they do things with arresting everybody and putting them in jail for the stupidest crimes would save us money. No, can't go down that road. So the only other logic that these geniuses have is to privatize the prison industry, and a lot of the prisons in this country, in the different states, are privatized now. And the deal that they have with the state is the state has to keep a minimum of, we'll say, 95%, and I'm not kidding. Like maybe I'll lower it a little bit. I'm sure I'm probably actually going too low, but we'll say maybe 90% capacity they have to be at, literally. So the deal is that the state says, okay, you can run the prison systems, you take care of all that crap, the bureaucracy, the paying the guards, hiring the guards, firing the guards, blah, 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 handling the prisoners and everything else. We'll prosecute them, and then we put them in your prison, and it ends up becoming just a huge money mill for these privatized prisons, because now they have to have 90% capacity. Well, every little thing now is you got to have new laws, because these private prisons have the senators and stuff in their pockets. So the state senators pass new laws to criminalize everything. And then now, law and lawmaking and law, quote unquote, law enforcement becomes about making money and not about actually enforcing just law and keeping the peace, which is what it was actually originally, years and years and years, the peace officer years ago, that's what it was intended for. Now it's about making money. As soon as you privatize something like that and it's about making cash, you're done. You're done. Because now it's never going to change. Just like it's like health care or anything else. If it's about making money, the bottom line is the company's always going to go with, where we make the most profit, because that's what these guys think about, these CEOs. They don't care about anybody else. It's how much money can I make myself in the company, and how can I make myself look good. And that's what's going on all over the place. And you know what else they do? I don't know if they do this in the UK, but these sick bastards, they take once you got to figure you have 90% capacity prison, right? People that are in jail for smoking a joint, or maybe they have 3 parking tickets or something, and for whatever reason they're in jail for 5 or 6 months. Because I've seen here, we've had judges send kids away to these youth prisons for the stupidest offenses. Like in one case, a girl got sent away for 6 months because she threw a piece of steak at her mother's boyfriend, and it was all about making money. So what they do at a lot of these prisons, though, is they hire. Once they have a 90% capacity rate, they hire the prisoners out. So, like, say you call, here in the States, you call customer service at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're all super excited because your customer service representative speaks English, and you're like, ha, they didn't, outsource it to India or Pakistan. It's an American. Great. This company pays people to be sitting up all night. And they don't pay them to be sitting up all night. The person you're talking to is sitting in a booth inside of a prison. That's right. They literally, it's like privatized slavery, dude. Privatized slavery is what we have in the 21st century.
And there's also security issues with that. A company, I won't mention them on air, but it's a company which I've been using on and off for registration of domains, of website domains, www. And you want to register a domain name. When you call their customer support, you're speaking to a convicted prisoner. Now, they've got access to your account, and of course, the whole economy has gone digital. Huge businesses like Amazon, which has got 26% of the online retail business in the world, is now, hanging by a thread. All of these enormous businesses and all of these millions of dollars flowing through every hour come down to just a couple of passwords that are known by the top bosses. But the companies that actually are managing the domains, like Amazon.com, are hiring prisoners who have all of that confidential information in front of them on a computer.
Nice thought, isn't it?
it's a bit strange, if you ask me. Because a lot of people that have private email have their private email address on their domain, which means that these prisoners, if they wanted to, could get involved in very, very sophisticated digital cybercrime, if they wanted to.
And they have caught them doing it already, because sometimes, which is ironic, the ones that a lot of times the ones like you'll see in TV, they'll take, you'll see the hacker and he goes to jail and they're like, yeah, I'm not allowed around computers, and they have the guy off in the corner somewhere like sewing or whatever. Wrong. That's not what happens in real life. Wrongo. They'll probably have him doing IT support or some sort of advanced something else. For the warden or whatever. It's amazing. It's legalized slavery, man. I mean, it really is. And it's disgusting. Because people have no idea. I talk to really intelligent people, and they're like, oh, that person should go to jail for this or go to jail for that. That's everybody's solution is you should call the police and that guy should go to jail. And I always, because now I know, once you understand what's really going on, you're not asleep. You don't have the, I guess you're right. No. I get fired up, and I'm like, do you understand how stupid of a thought that is? And I always end up getting in an argument with them. Because they're like, what?
The problem is, of course, is that these prisons, now that they have all of these IT support units in there, and they've got, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of computer terminals, and they're doing all of this core support for these digital corporations and digital businesses, they are now like, they always used to say that a prison was like a college of crime. But in the old days, it was things like how to pick the lock on a door, how to force open a double-glazed window. Nowadays, of course, they're going to be going to prison, and it's going to be like a hacker's university.
Oh, I've literally seen cases where people did not know anything about computers, and by the time they got out of prison, they knew more about computers than any of us, 4 or 5 of us put together. And it's because they have nothing but time on their hands. And I'm not bashing anybody for trying to rehabilitate themselves or anything. And in some cases, I've seen it turn out for the better, where people bettered themselves, and that's awesome. But what I'm saying is, I'm not bashing the people that are locked up actually at all. I'm bashing the people that run the system and the system itself, because it's legalized slavery. These people aren't going to jail because they should be in jail because they raped a nun or they murdered people or they're a politician, or they're a member of the royal family. Or they're Hillary Clinton, or any of the above. It's not that. It's not like they did any of that evil stuff, or that they're any of those evil people. No. Some of these people are in prison for the most mundane, retarded things, and it's because they have to, like, at least here in the States, they have to keep this occupancy level, and it's all about money. Anyway, I don't want to keep us too off track, because I know that there was a few things that you wanted to talk about. Going back into the Illuminati and the Knights of Malta, Chris, and we have about 8 minutes left.
Because we're coming to the last section of the show, I just want to, go back to the Knights of Malta, because they are one of the most influential groups. All these members of the royal family, all these royal families that we've been discussing throughout the show, they have their own secret orders. The Order of the Garter is one of the most important ones with the British royal family. But the Swedish royal family, again, it's the same family as the British royal family, there's no difference. They have their own order, or their own brotherhood, and it's called the Order of the Seraphim. But it's also known as the Order of the Serpent, or the Order of the Snake, or the Brotherhood of the Snake. And all of these orders really have a common root, and the common root goes back usually to the 10th century in terms of its European roots, and that links them up to the Order of the Knights of Malta. Now, they controlled Malta, which was an island nation. They got thrown off of Malta for being wicked and for taxing the peasants. and then they controlled the island of Rhodes, which is a Greek island. And then they got thrown off of Rhodes as well, and they ended up in Rome. And so in Rome, you've got three countries, all within walking distance of each other. You have Vatican City. A short walk from there, you've got Knights of Malta, which is a sovereign microstate. And then, of course, you've got Italy. So it's pretty amazing. And, how do they get their money? Well, their membership or their population, what they call their population, is 13,000 people. Most of them are men. And they've got some very famous men who are citizens of this Knights of Malta. Every Knights of Malta car is a diplomatic vehicle, which means that if the police stop that vehicle, they can't arrest you while you're sitting inside the vehicle, because the vehicle itself is the sovereign territory of that nation. That's what a diplomatic vehicle is. They travel everywhere using diplomatic passports. And they use diplomatic black bags. Now, a diplomatic black bag does not actually exist in real life. It can be anything. It's like a make-believe bag which is accepted by the diplomatic service worldwide. For example, you can get a jumbo jet, and you can say to, you can arrive in your jumbo jet, and they'll say, okay, well, that jumbo jet is worth $47 million. You're going to have to pay duty on it because you're importing a brand new jumbo jet into our country. And you'll say, no, the jumbo jet is in my diplomatic bag. And they'll have to say, oh, right, okay, show us your diplomatic passport. You show them your diplomatic passport. They say, okay, that's fine, on your way, and you've got a $47 million airplane through customs without paying any taxes. That's what it's about. It's like a boys' club for the mega elite.
Must be nice.
And two of these diplomatic bags were actually opened and investigated very unusually a few years ago. And this is only two of these black bags. They found really bad snuff movie pornography with people actually being strangled and killed. They found cocaine. They found heroin. They found liquid drugs. They found pills. This is what's going on with the elite. Pornography, snuff movies, powder drugs. This is what they're into. All right? I mean, these people are nothing more than criminals. I'm talking about members of parliament, the lords, the aristocrats, the senators, the congressmen, White House officials, Pentagon officials, Ministry of Defense. All of these people are involved in this type of thing. How do they get around it? Well, they join the Knights of Malta or one of its associated brotherhoods. They have brotherhood offices all over the world. The most prominent nations where they're operating is Germany, Netherlands, Sweden and France. And they're also in South Africa as well. Like I say, their population is 13,000, but they then have what they call associated citizens, whatever that means, which is about another 80 to 90,000 people. And so these criminal members of parliament, criminal, government banksters and gangsters, obviously they want to become a member of the Knights of Malta because, they could get a diplomatic passport much easier. So
you ever see the
that's
movie
what the
Lethal Weapon?
Illuminati. I just wanted to say, Popeye, because we're running out of time now. That is essentially what the Illuminati is. It's God, G-O-D, gold, oil, diamonds. or gold opium drugs.
If you ever see to understand the arrogance, if you ever see the movie Lethal Weapon, the one, I think it's Lethal Weapon 2, at the end the guy's like, diplomatic immunity. That's what they do. They just, they do what they want. They break our laws. They don't care. Ugh. Chris, we are out of time, brother, because as always,
it's gone
time
by
flies.
very quickly, isn't it? It's gone by very fast.
Complete blink of an eye. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you check out Chris's show. Make sure you check out his website. Make sure you check out all of his great movies. You won't be disappointed. I'll catch you all again live Tuesday. Till then, the solutions to our problems are most definitely inside.